If Venus is so much closer to Earth than Mars, why don't we investigate it? What planet is closest to Earth? Definitely not Mars. Mars is a well-known planet, however it is not the planet that is nearest to Earth. Venus is the planet that is closest to the Earth in terms of distance, while Mercury often spends more time nearby than Venus on a daily basis. How is that even possible? And why aren't there more expeditions to examine Venus if it is the planet that is nearest to Earth? Move along. Today, there is substantial consideration being given to visiting Mars in the upcoming years by space exploration. Even Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, has often stated his desire to send the first generation of humans to Mars as soon as feasible. Although this objective is becoming more and more feasible, and certain space agencies, like NASA, have programs that aim to take the initial steps toward colonizing Mars, it is still reasonable to wonder why Mars, and not Venus, which is far closer to Earth, is the focus of this fixation. First off, why did we claim that Mercury is the planet that is nearest to Earth? Isn't the order of closest to the Sun meant to be Mercury, Venus, then Earth? If so, Venus should be far closer to Mercury than vice versa. The problem is that Venus, which spins more slowly and consequently spends less time away from the Earth, spends more time near to the Earth on average than Mercury, which spins very quickly. However, that only applies in theory. In reality, things are entirely different. Venus is closer to Earth than Mercury if we are talking about true space travel because Venus is closer to our planet than Mercury is. So it's accurate to state that Venus is closer. But if we look at it from that perspective, Mercury is even further away than Mars since getting there requires spacecraft to accelerate using gravitational assistance for years, whereas getting there requires taking advantage of the approach gaps between Mars and Earth every 26 months, which allows us to get there in less than a year. So, what planet is the one nearest to Earth? If you want us to make a video answering this question, let us know in the comments. Returning with Venus, it would have been impossible for decades that Venus would no longer be regarded by the scientific community in the same manner as in the contemporary period. Venus served as the primary impetus for astronomers and scientists to organize themselves in the 18th century in order to unravel the secrets of the solar system. Venus was the first planet that humanity reached after being able to depart Earth in spaceships. It was the first planet on which mankind successfully used technology and our first successful planetary encounter outside of Earth. Venus and Earth are nearly identical. They are similar in terms of size, density, gravitational pull, and physical makeup. Both are reasonably close to one another and are in the habitable region of our star. But at some point in the history of the solar system, Venus turned into a hostile, searing inferno where no kind of life can thrive, while Earth evolved into a celestial paradise for life as we know it. A spaceship would first have to contend with Venus's corrosive, toxic atmosphere, which corrodes metal and deteriorates any electrical components, before it could attempt to land on the planet's surface. Visitors would experience typical surface temperatures of 430 degrees Celsius, which would melt any spacesuit. All of this is accompanied by persistently thick clouds that block off the sun's beams, turning the sky orange and producing acid rain that dissolves all it touches. Remember that Venus experiences a persistent greenhouse effect, which makes severe temperatures constant and unaffected by location. That means there is no winter on this planet, which means there is no way to escape the sweltering heat. As if all of this weren't extreme enough, the atmosphere on Venus has an atmospheric pressure of about 90 bars, which is comparable to being submerged 1 kilometer beneath the surface of the ocean. As you can imagine, no human or other living thing could survive in such harsh conditions, at least that is our belief. Birth separation of twins. More than 3,000 planets have been found circling other stars by the Kepler satellite telescope throughout the years, many of which are in habitable regions where water might be stable on the surface. Since we only receive a few light points from these Earth 2.0, which are hundreds of thousands of light years away, they are challenging to investigate with current technology. There is a convenient Earth 2.0 just next to ours. It is Venus. Research on the atmosphere of the second closest planet to the Sun has revealed that there is a strong likelihood that at some point in Venus' past, the planet was covered in water, much like Earth is today. It is even likely that Venus once had oceans and may have also had vast forests teeming with life. Of course, there is currently no method to demonstrate this. However, by comprehending the past of Venus, we will also be better equipped to comprehend the past of Earth and the characteristics of exoplanets that may harbor life. Additionally, while pondering climate change, scientists and decision-makers can study Venus because something spectacular had to have occurred for Venus' atmosphere to go from resembling a paradise to the horror it is now. The Earth won't become into Venus, according to specialists like Bob Grimm, director of the Department of Space Studies at the Southwest Research Institute, because that demands quantities of carbon dioxide that our planet does not have. Nevertheless, Venus may teach us a lot about how the temperature of Earth may change in the future, and a deeper comprehension of these processes will make us more ready for climatic changes in the coming years. Anyone would ask why NASA ceased exploring Venus when there is still so much to learn about a planet so near to Earth. Why is there so little effort put into exploring our planet, despite it being so important? Money on the one hand, money is a problem. Only a small portion of the 0.5% of the U.S. federal funding allotted to NASA for its space exploration projects and missions goes to planetary science. Second, studying Mars rather than Venus is more simpler for a variety of reasons. Even though it takes a while, it is easier for our spacecraft to catch up with Mars since it is farther away than Venus and moves more slowly. On the other hand, Venus moves considerably more quickly since it is closer to the Sun. As a result, our ships must likewise reach extremely high speeds, which are only achievable with gravitational support. Lead is not melted on Mars. The rovers that were launched to the Red Planet are still operating today. Because Mars is not as hostile to technology as Earth, although their lifespans were initially only a few years, they now have productive lives measured in decades. It appears that when we get there, it will likewise be amiable toward others. The record for the operation of a spacecraft on the surface of Venus is 2 hours and was attained by the Venera 13 exploration probe launched by the Soviet Union in 1981. In comparison, any robotic mission to the surface of Venus will be incredibly brief and exceedingly perilous. It makes sense that NASA would not want to spend $1 million on a mission that would only collect data for 2 hours. Venus will never have the amorous attraction that Mars possesses. It is unthinkable to assume that humans will ever step foot on Venus, but we will one day walk on Mars and may even settle there in the coming years. This idea inspires us to keep researching and exploring the Red Planet, which may end up serving as the human race's secondary home in the future. 3 extremely similar planets, Venus, Earth, and Mars, are all in the habitable zone, but only the Earth meets the requirements for having both living things and liquid water. Venus, Mars, and Earth are all in the habitable zone. Both the history of both planets and the history of our own planet can be better understood by studying the other two. Life is the catalyst for discovery. The human race's obsession with finding evidence of extraterrestrial life, that is, to show that we are not alone in the universe, is one of the main reasons space organizations worldwide don't invest in investigating Venus. Any space agency would find it difficult to resist the question of whether we are the only species in the cosmos. To locate habitable zones and assess whether Mars is livable, the Mars 2020 rover was deployed to the planet. Because of this, telescopes search for exoplanets in habitable regions, solar systems that can support liquid water, and signals that could originate from advanced extraterrestrial civilizations. All of our combined efforts were directed toward one common objective: to discover anything that would inspire hope that we are not alone in this huge cosmos. Since water can support life, at least life as we know it, carbon-based and oxygen-dependent, where there is water, finding water has long been one of the primary objectives of missions to Mars. Since the only known form of life in the cosmos is that on Earth, we are unable to search for other life forms. Space agencies have focused their attention on Mars and the moons of the gas giants Jupiter and Saturn, particularly on those moons containing significant amounts of frozen water. One of these is the icy world Europa, Jupiter's moon, and Enceladus, Saturn's moon, which may contain oceans hidden behind their heavy ice sheets. Venus is not appealing for exploration because of this constant search for extraterrestrial life. Since asteroids and comets were the ones that first brought water to Earth and also provided us with the building blocks of life, amino acids and their precursors, scientists initially believed that Venus had an ocean on its surface at the beginning of the solar system's history. Could life have evolved on Venus during that time if this occurred on Earth, which most likely also occurred on Venus and the other planets in the solar system? For nearly 3.9 billion years, Earth has been a livable planet. For approximately 500 million years, Mars was livable. Europa, the moon of Jupiter, might be inhabited right now. Sadly, all evidence points to Venus being incapable of supporting life because it no longer enjoys the conditions it once did. As a result, Venus has not been the focus of as many space exploration missions as other planets. New evidence for Venus devotees. 2 new missions to Venus, our nearest neighbor in the solar system, have just been announced by NASA. These new missions' principal goal is to comprehend how, while having qualities identical to Earth, this planet turned into a hellish place. The 2 missions were chosen as part of the 9th round of NASA's Discovery Program competitions. Since 1992, the program has supported the creation of more than 20 space exploration missions and equipment with the goal of comprehending the evolution of the solar system. Each Venus mission will get an initial $500 million in financing for its development, and both will be launched between 2028 and 2030. The following missions were chosen to explore Venus: Da Vinci Plus, research of Venus in deep atmosphere of noble gases, chemistry and imaging, research of Venus in deep atmosphere of noble gases, chemistry and imaging, in order to comprehend how Venus' atmosphere arose and evolved, as well as ascertain whether the planet has ever had an ocean. The Da Vinci Plus mission will measure the atmospheric composition. The objective of the mission is to understand why Venus' atmosphere is a runaway greenhouse as compared to Earth's by sending a descending sphere through the planet's dense atmosphere and taking exact measurements of noble gases and other elements. The second mission is called Veritas, which stands for Emissivity, Radio Science, NSAR, Topography, and Spectroscopy of Venus. Veritas will survey the surface of Venus in order to evaluate its geological history and determine why it developed so differently from Earth. In order to produce 3D topographic reconstructions and to determine whether processes like plate tectonics and volcanism are still occurring on Venus, Veritas will orbit the planet Venus and map out the surface elevations of practically the whole planet. These new missions will be in charge of uncovering Venus' previously undiscovered mysteries and providing us with information on the likelihood that the planet's clouds contain bacteria-based life. Would you be interested in seeing a video where we go into greater detail about these upcoming expeditions to Venus? Share your thoughts with us in a thoughtful remark.